close to that record as well. So, in your eyes, Matt, what is more prestigious to you?
I've never really been blown away by how many titles someone's had, because as you've seen, like Sasha was not the champion last month, even though she'd won it and then dropped it, and then she's picked it up again this month. That's not her fault, but she's got 2 in the space of a couple of months. But then that's the problem, because that can happen many times. I think there's been matches in the past, between Triple H and Randy, where it's been a matter of minutes, where it's changed back from one to another. Things like that can up your number for no real effort. So I do kind of have the real killer about this is the hardcore title. How much prestige do you give someone for that? Because you could win that in like a matter of seconds as well. In any match, in any time, you could win that title, and it happens multiple times for some of those champions. So that's why I don't rank them as great a champion as someone, say, like an Intercontinental champion or whatever, because that run probably didn't count as much, because it could have been just a few seconds. But I think it's a lot harder to hold the fans' interest, like you said about CM Punk, doing it for that amount of time and not to get rejected by the fans, not to let it slip, not to get injured, not to miss your dates. That's harder to do. I have more respect for the champions that held it longer than I do for the amount of times that they won it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, if you're asking about, I mean, if to put it in perspective, if you said Bruno Sammartino or Ric Flair, it's a very difficult one to choose between. They're both incredible wrestlers. I mean, no one went around as many territories as Ric Flair did back in the territory system, defending that belt. And that is a very prestigious title, the NWA title. I mean, I'm not talking about his WCW title belts. I'm talking about the NWA title, which myself and Matt, we've seen the back end of that title quite a bit. So we know how prestigious that is. And again, Bruno Sammartino, he held the belt, but he was holding the belt in the WWF back then. So it was like you'd have all the opponents coming in, of course. And you've got to remember, 9 years, that is a hell of a long time to be on top at Madison Square Garden. And for people to keep wanting you to win, I mean, as a babyface, Matt, that's like, whoa. I mean, you could imagine it as a heel, but a babyface? Good grief, you've got to like the guy. So for him to have drawn that many people, my hat's off to him, because I think overall, where do I sit with it? I mean, if I'm not talking about names aside, I think the title run itself is more prestigious. I think if you hold on to the belt for a long period of time, that's more prestigious than losing, winning. Especially if it's in quick succession. I mean, the thing with Ric Flair, it's difficult with him because he's been around for such a long time. I mean, Rick wrestled until he was like, well past the time, and he could still go. I mean, that's the thing with Rick. He could cut a great pace. I mean, you look at his last match, or his official last match in WWE, that was supposed to be his last match anyway, against Shawn Michaels. That the pace he cut in that was incredible, and he was well out of his prime. But that just goes to show you how good of a performer he was, considering everything that happened to him. But I mean, he'd been around for so long. I mean, if you look at John Cena, he's not been around half as long as Ric Flair, but he's already going to catch up. But what you've got to remember is the business today moves a lot quicker than it used to back then. Like, you got tons more pay-per-views, tons more TV, so that's why that happens. But what you've also got to remember is back in the day, you had more live shows. Now, they might not have always been taped, but trust me, the champion was on it defending somewhere. So, I honestly believe, Matt, that it's he who holds the belt longest for me. Seems more prestigious for me, in my mind anyway. But it's a tough one. I think both definitely rank up there, and I definitely want to see WWE bring John Cena in to do that kind of a storyline for WrestleMania next year. I would really like to see that happen, where he will equal Ric Flair's record or whatnot. I think that's a really good storyline. Let's go to the next question then. This is from Chris in Aberdeen. Okay, will there ever be another Brock Lesnar? And how will his legacy be remembered, do you think? So, I don't. I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't think there will ever be another Brock Lesnar. Quite frankly, I mean, there's never anyone of anyone. I mean, everyone says that, don't they? Unless I guess you could say Buddy Rogers and Rick, maybe. But in a lot of ways, Matt, Brock Lesnar is his own thing, isn't he? Do you ever think there'll be another thing like Brock?
No, I don't think there'll ever be a wrestler like Brock. I mean, he's got the raw, natural abilities. He was born with these abilities, that he has. So it would be hard to recreate them. You have to find someone who's like genetically superior, like he is in the first place, and then someone with the aptitude to apply those skills. It'll be incredibly hard. Just like you're saying, you wouldn't find another one of anyone because, like you're saying, they would, if they could. They would have had the next Undertaker in place by now, but they haven't got one. That's why they bring him back year after year, despite the fact that he's past it now. Yeah,
you always. I mean, it's like Hulk Hogan. Will we ever get another Hulk Hogan? Well, we've got a John Cena. It's what it is. I mean, in a lot of ways, they're similar. They're in the same position, but they're not the same. Same, if you know what I mean. I mean, John Cena is John Cena. He's not another Hulk Hogan. So that's what you got there. I mean. Quite frankly, I've seen a lot of guys look as good as Brock, but they can't perform as good as Brock with it. I mean, I've seen big guys and jacked up guys, but I mean, Brock's amateur background, the UFC stuff, I don't think there'll be another guy who's that sort of badass at what he does, the way he carries himself as well. I don't think there'll be another one of him that can do a cross-promotional kind of thing, make as much money as he's done in both companies and be at the top of both the way he's done it. I just don't think that's going to come around often. And that is why I keep saying that WWE need to make the most of Brock Lesnar, why they got him, and make sure whoever does get that victory, they do it to the right person. It's essential. The second part to that, Matt, is what will his legacy be remembered? I mean, if we're talking about now, Matt, how would we look back at a Brock Lesnar? Because it's interesting, is it? Because you forget about his first run in WWE. Because even his first run in WWE, Matt, would be Hall of Famer in a lot of ways. Even though it's 2 years he had in the business. I mean,
I think back of Brock Lesnar's early career, and the image that stays in my mind is him wiping Hulk Hogan's blood over his chest. Even then. Moment. He was the destroyer and the conqueror, conquering people like Hulk Hogan, anybody they threw in front of him. And it's never really changed, he's come back now and it's more evolved, he's more polished, he's more of a fighter, the UFC kind of character. But it's never really changed about the dominance that he's had. He'll always be remembered as one of the most dominant wrestlers there have ever been.
I think people are really quick as well, that those people that have only seen Brock since he's come back, his second stint, and they say, he's a bit lazy in the ring, he doesn't do much, he doesn't sell as much and all the rest of it. You got to remember, since day one when Brock Lesnar debuted on WWE SmackDown, this guy, on Raw, this guy, Matt, pretty much has been at the top. I mean, he's never been anywhere else. There was no Intercontinental run into all this. It was literally squash matches, and then he won the King of the Ring. He done what you just said. That image of Hulk Hogan took him out of the game, and then he'd go on to that year's SummerSlam and beat The Rock, and that was under 6 months. He's beaten The Rock in the main event of SummerSlam. Then to go on and face the Undertaker twice. One of them in Hell in a Cell. Then there was the image I'll never forget, Matt, as well, is Madison Square Garden, where he picks up Big Show for the first time for the F5, and there was that whole speculation whether he could do it. And God, man, I mean, even watching him suplex the Big Show was amazing. He does that. He loses the belt. There's the whole turn with Paul Heyman, and then I remember it very well because then he goes into the Royal Rumble and wins that in his first go. So he's won the King of the Ring, the Royal Rumble in his first year. Then he's in the main event of WrestleMania against Kurt Angle. And, of course, everybody remembers the scene where he comes down on his damn head and he still manages to get up to finish the match. He comes out of that. He has a run with a very young John Cena on Backlash, as I recall. He goes up against the Big Show a few more times. I remember an Iron Man match. I don't know if you can remember that, Matt, on SmackDown between him and Kurt Angle. It was an actual hour-long Iron Man match between the two. And you know, all these other matches, of course, it didn't end so well that first time round. But that guy, I mean, even in 2 years, you've got to say that would be Hall of Fame bound as it is. So when he came back again, he's just kind of created it's kind of like Shawn Michaels in a lot of ways, just a lot quicker. I mean, you think of Shawn Michaels, the old Shawn Michaels of the 90s, and then you think of the Shawn Michaels that came back after 4 years, and it's like two different things in a lot of ways. You know, it's like two different parts of that character. That's how good Brock Lesnar is. So I think his legacy will really rank high. I really do. I think he'll get more praise when he's finished. I think people will realise just how good he was, because. And this whole business about him not selling as much, remember, everyone in the back is telling him that. I mean, they want him like that because this is the guy that beat The Undertaker. I mean, he's got so many records that he's beat now. But that streak probably, Matt, is probably going to be his legacy, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'd imagine so, yeah. I mean, everyone for years was wondering who was going to be the guy, if there was going to be a guy. And a lot of people fell into the mindset that there shouldn't be one. So the controversy behind it alone stands, doesn't it?
Yeah. Thanks for your question there on Brock. What we're going to go to now. Heard you guys talking about the great use of squash matches a couple of weeks ago, using Braun Strowman. Is there anyone else on the roster that you can think of that would have benefited from the squash match entry into WWE? Matt, is there anyone on top of your mind that would have benefited from doing some squash matches for a while before they get sort of slung into it?
I think it seems like Jack Swagger could have benefited from a few of them.
I mean, top of my head, I would probably say I would like to have seen Baron Corbin. He would have been a pretty decent one that should have gone through the squash matches for a while and get him over. Like, let's see his best moves in the ring. You know, let's kind of showcase him, and then you get him to a big match. But it's unfortunate for him because he's had to go through against Dolph Ziggler and stuff like that straight away, who's like a workhorse. And it's not always going to showcase Baron Corbin in the best way. He's the only one I can think of the top of my head. Really, Swagger's a good one. I mean, there's probably many guys on the roster that would have benefited from that kind of approach. But probably as well, what's his name? Apollo Crews could have probably done with that as well. Quite frankly, but it's definitely worth using. If you're WWE, I've no problem with that. This is an interesting question, Matt. DX1, would WWE benefit from having an off-season? Can you imagine that, Matt?
No, I can't actually imagine that. I mean, even at Christmas, like if one of the shows falls on like the Boxing Day or whatever, I'm still going to watch it, you know. Yeah. I mean, I don't really get bored of it. It doesn't come to a time when I'm thinking, I could really do with a break from wrestling. If you do want a break, you just don't watch it. It doesn't really need an off season. I mean, there'll always be people watching it. I'm sure in other sports, if they didn't have an off season, people would still watch it. It's beneficial to the actual the people that play the sports. But for wrestling, not so much of a problem. I don't feel. I mean, I know these guys work incredibly hard, but they're incredibly passionate to do the job that they do. So I don't see a problem with it myself.
Sure. Okay, let's. We're going to take the last 4 questions now, Matt. So we're running down the questions here. We've gone through quite a lot of them, so I'm quite pleased. We've got a question now from Cassidy, and it's a TNA question. Was there ever a time in TNA's history where you thought they were a threat to WWE? Matt, top of your head, was there the time that you felt they could be a challenging rival to WWE?
I never really thought they were going to be a threat to WWE. I never really thought like, this could jeopardize the WWE. I only ever thought once that like they could actually be a good second place, not a threat, but that they could be a good alternative, and that they would be secure and actually be able to continue and improve the product. And that was